Good day. GE with the word here. Today I want to speak to you about what I call crisis faith. I want to do so in three separate messages. Why? Because I have seen many Christians over the years falter and stumble and suffer when hard times came. Habakkuk in the Old Testament is a great example of what to do when the crisis, the hard times, comes. First, I want to set a parameter. I'm going to assume that you are a person of faith, a Christian. And now let's introduce some possible scenarios. Let's assume that your doctor has just told you that you have cancer, or you have just lost your job, or your wife or your husband is leaving you. Maybe your house just burned down, or the police called and your child has been in a bad wreck and his life is in the balance. Maybe you have discovered that you've contracted a debilitating disease, MS, MD, kidney disease, lupus, diabetes, or something else. These are just scenarios, possible scenarios. There are other disasters. So now, what do you do? A Christian of faith, what do you do? What is your attitude? What do you do or turn to in order to have victory in your situation? Not necessarily some healing or some miracle. I'm talking about victory in the crisis. I want to read to you Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Habakkuk, O Lord, how long will I cry, and thou wilt not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. Why dost thou show me iniquity, and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there are those that raise up strife and contention. And therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous, and therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. Listen, Habakkuk was facing a horrible situation. His nation, Judah, was corrupt. The leaders were corrupt. The religious leaders were corrupt. The nation was sinful and had turned from God. The Chaldeans were on the verge of invading his country, and he was wondering why God could use such a sinful people as the Chaldeans to punish his people, and why God let sin be so rampant. So, in the middle of this crisis, what did he do? Well, he went to God. I want to tell you two critical qualities there were about his going to God in the middle of these crises. First of all, he was sure of God's reality. Yes, he questioned God. He cried out to God, but he never questioned the reality of God. I've heard people in crisis say things like, I don't think God even exists. Listen, you know God exists. And Habakkuk knew that God exists. God was a reality in his life. He questioned God, but he never questioned the reality of God. And in the midst of his crisis, Habakkuk went to God. Listen, my friend, all around us, we have people in crisis turning to anything and everything, drugs, alcohol. People are in despair, hopeless, and are searching for an answer in everything except God. Crisis faith turns to God in the midst of our anguish and confusion. Why? Because he is there. Now we go on to chapter 2, verse 1, and we find that Habakkuk was not only sure that God was a reality, but he expected an answer. Let's listen to chapter 2, verse 1. He says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. Now we need to notice a triad of truths about this verse. First of all, he wasn't threatening God. There are people who go to the Lord in prayer, and essentially what they're doing is saying, now, God, if you don't answer my way, I won't listen to you, or you're not real if you don't answer my way. Habakkuk wasn't threatening God. We need to notice something else. He was determined to be patient and to wait for God's answer. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me. He was determined to be patient, determined to wait for God's answer, because he was sure that one would come. And then third, he was confident that God's answer would be the right one, no matter what that answer was. He says, when I am reproved, he is saying to himself, I know I've got things all wrong, God, and I'm going to wait for you to tell me what's the answer, what's the truth, and you will reprove me for my lack of faith. In conclusion, let me say this. My friend, we all need crisis faith sometimes, maybe even many times. And I hope to bring 2 more short messages on this subject, God willing. And I hope you'll come back. But I want you to remember this. In your next crisis, go to God. He's there, and wait for his answer. May God bless and guide you this day and in those to come.